One of the best players in fantasy has his status up in the air for week 13. My name is Joe Dolan, and this is the Fantasy Points daily lineup for the final day of November 30th, 2022.
It's time for the FantasyPoints.com daily lineup. Staying on top of the latest news and updates around the NFL. Rise and shine, folks. We're taking the field. Here's your host, FantasyPoints.com's Joe Dolan.
It's a gloomy day here in South Carolina. I had a big thunderstorm roll through last night. The dogs were a little unsettled. Now, starting at quarterback for the Packers in Week 13, it appears will be Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers came into Week 12's game against the Eagles with an avulsion fracture in his throwing thumb, something he's been playing through for about 2 months. And then Rodgers, of course, took a beating in that game, and then Jordan Love came in and played pretty well against the Eagles, though most of his passing yardage came on one play to Christian Watson. Now, Rodgers said after the game that he's fine and expects to play against the Bears this week, and he confirmed on the Pat McAfee show on Tuesday that those tests on his ribs came back clean. But with the Packers at 4-8, their playoff hopes are almost completely extinguished, and Green Bay certainly has some decisions to make about the future. Now, our Dr. Edwin Porras said Rodgers' ability to play this week is strictly a pain management issue, presuming the test revealed no significant structural damage. And that appears to be the case. The question then becomes is, when does Rodgers end up playing through so much pain that they just decide to shut him down and get a good look at Jordan Love? Maybe Rodgers doesn't want them to get a good look at Jordan Love. In our first running back spot today, we don't know what to expect with Pittsburgh. Just when Najee Harris, I have had the worst luck on prop bets this year, though. Oh, just so bad. Sometimes it just happens. It do be that way. Just when Najee Harris was starting to gain some momentum, he left Week 12's win over the Colts with an abdominal injury. Yeah, that would be one of the prop bets I made. Remember that Jaylen Warren left Week 11 early with a hamstring injury that head coach Mike Tomlin described as not significant at the time. So Jaylen Warren might not miss another game. But if he sits out again and Najee also misses Week 13 with this abdominal issue, then Benny Snell, of all people, is in play as Pittsburgh's lead runner. Deep backup Anthony McFarland would also be in the mix as a change of pace option after he played 21 snaps in Week 12 with 30 yards rushing on 6 carries and a couple of catches for 11 yards receiving. Now, McFarland looked good, but Snell played more snaps at 28 of them and got the bulk of the carries against the Colts, posting 12 carries for 61 yards and a touchdown and 1 catch for 6 yards. The practice statuses, stat-eye, of both Najee and Jaylen need to be monitored this week before we really decide what to do with this Pittsburgh backfield. In our second running back spot, one of the NFL's best running backs is coming off a heroic performance. Indeed, Josh Jacobs is still the lead runner in Las Vegas, but rookie Zamir White would likely be elevated into that role if Jacobs were to miss time in the future, with Amir Abdullah and Brandon Bolden also factoring in. Why is that important? Well, Jacobs picked up an ankle injury leading up into Week 12, and he managed a spectacular performance playing through the issue with 303 yards from scrimmage and 2 touchdowns against the Seahawks. Now, he did briefly leave the game in the second half with a calf injury, which could be related to that ankle injury, but he returned to the lineup before ripping off his game-winning 86-yard touchdown run. Now, Jacobs' injury should be monitored this week, and NFL Network reported on Tuesday that Jacobs hopes to play in Week 13, which means he's not a lock to suit up by any stretch, and Jacobs will have his practice reps monitored this week. Zamir White is the player to add just in case the Raiders shut Jacobs down for a week or two. But if Jacobs is active, White is a poor reach with Abdullah, a better complementary and pass-catching option. In our first wide receiver spot, we have someone putting together a great year. The Bucs' Chris Godwin is coming off season highs in catches, 12, and receiving yards against the Browns in Week 12, which was 113. With Browns slot cornerback Greg Newsome out with a concussion. And somewhat quietly, Godwin has caught at least 6 balls in every game since Week 4. Godwin, of course, is the Buccaneers' primary slot wide receiver, running about 75% of his routes inside. He's got a great matchup this week, as the slot is where he'll draw the veteran Chris Harris in Week 13 against the Saints. Now, while we used to consider Harris an absolute shutdown guy out of the slot before, at 33, he hasn't been that guy this year. Over the last 5 weeks, Harris's 0.37 fantasy points per coverage snap allowed per fantasy points data are 4th most among primary slot corners and 2nd most among slot corners with over 100 coverage snaps over that span. I anticipate this is where Tom Brady will attack and attack often on Monday night. At wide receiver 2, just put the Rams out of their misery, please. The worst year of Allen Robinson's career, in the midst of the worst year for basically all Rams players on offense, mercifully has come to a close. Coach Sean McVay told reporters after Week 12's loss to the Chiefs that Robinson needs foot surgery and his season is over. Look at him giving a thumbs up there. No, thumbs down. Robinson ends his first year with the Rams with just 339 receiving yards and 33.9 receiving yards per game, somehow worse than the 34.2 yards per game he averaged with the Bears last year in what was previously the worst year of his career. At this stage, the Rams may shut everyone down, including quarterback Matthew Stafford with his neck injury and DT Aaron Donald with his ankle injury. The fact that they're giving up a top 5 pick to the Lions is a price they paid for a Super Bowl last year. This was always a possibility, even if this year is way more of a disaster than they anticipated. Limiting the impact of that asset should not be the primary focus for the Rams. It's already gone. Their focus should be trying to regroup for 2023, if at all possible. Now, Van Jefferson is the top receiver for LA right now, if it even matters with Bryce Perkins at quarterback. And at our flex spot, we have to monitor the Jets' backfield because, heck, all of a sudden, this offense is decent. The Jets not only pulled the plug on Zach Wilson prior to Week 12, but they also deactivated James Robinson in favor of rookie Zonovan Bam Knight. Zonovan Knight. Bam. There always has to be a running back named Bam. And Bam had yet to dress in his rookie season as a UDFA out of NC State. Now, it was expected to be a 2-man backfield between Michael Carter and Ty Johnson in Week 12, but Knight worked as the number 2 running back before becoming the lead back after Carter left in the 3rd quarter with an ankle injury. Knight finished with 14 carries for 69 yards rushing, and he caught all 3 of his targets for 34 yards in his NFL debut. And he also paced the backfield with a 48% snap share, working ahead of Johnson at 24%. Knight is decent size at 5'11 and 209 pounds, and his athletic traits are okay. So our Greg Cosell believed he profiled best as a number 2 running back. Greg noted that he's more of a 1-speed back who possessed patience and vision as a runner, and that he had some viable traits as a receiver as well. Now, this backfield could be a headache moving forward with 3 backs likely seeing playing time in most weeks, but Knight has a chance to emerge if Carter misses time. But the problem is Robinson could be back in the mix if Carter does indeed miss time. And he has just a low ankle sprain per head coach Robert Saleh, so Carter is not ruled out yet for Week 13. But he isn't fully healthy, and the Jets are clearly searching for someone to step up and take the lead runner spot since Breece Hall's injury. And Knight made a strong first impression. As for Week 13, the Vikings shut down the Patriots' run game on Thanksgiving, but got crushed by Tony Pollard in Week 11. Minnesota could also get defensive tackle Dalvin Tomlinson back from a calf injury this week, which would make things tougher for Knight, Carter, whoever the hell the Jets throw out there in their backfield. I'm Joe Dolan. This has been the Fantasy Points Daily Lineup. Thanks for bearing with the time change for us. Sometimes life things happen, but it was good to bring this episode to you. Please stay tuned to fantasypoints.com for our super early bird special, which will be launching in the next couple of weeks. And I will see everybody in our subscriber Discord. You can also follow me. You can see it down there at Fantasy Points for the website and me at FG_Dolan on Twitter. Thanks, everybody. Have a great Wednesday.